Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webcast. It is Sunday, November 3rd, 2024. I'm South Ops meteorologist Eric Druids. Looking at the water vapor satellite imagery, you can see we have a large ridge of high pressure over the eastern Pacific with an inside slider trough now over the desert southwest, and that's going to help set the stage for the Santa Ana wind pattern we're expecting the next day. Visible satellite imagery shows much less cloud cover today than yesterday. There's still some clouds moving from northwest to southeast along the edge of the trough, but things should clear out as the day progresses. Looking at today's San Diego sounding, so this is the weather balloon data today from San Diego. If you look at the subplot in the top right where you see the green line and the blue line, the green line is the RH profile with height in the lowest 5,000 feet above ground level today, and the blue line is the same thing but for yesterday. So the marine layer today looks like it's just shy of 5,000 feet, so it's still a pretty deep marine layer in the southern portions of the south coast. Now, unfortunately, Vandenberg's data was incomplete today, so we can't look at them, but the marine layer there is much shallower than at San Diego. We could see that illustrated here in the 24-hour RTMA relative humidity comparison, comparing the RH at 15 UTC yesterday to 15 UTC today. I'm using UTC just because we had the time change from daylight to standard. And so you could see it's quite a bit more humid along portions of the south half of the south coast, as well as in the eastern and southern mountains PSAs, as well as out in the central Mojave and in the eastern deserts. Also some portions of the southern Sierra foothills and southern portions of the southern Sierra PSA. But if you look further to the north and west, you'll start seeing some drying, as well as especially in the central Sierra, and that has to do with that ridge moving in and that trough sliding further to the east. Here's the RTMA areas of low and high RH, filtering out RH 15% or less or 80% or more. The good news is, at the start of today, there's a lot of areas that are high RH, especially along the coast. You can see a lot along the south coast due to that deep marine layer this morning along the south coast, as well as portions to the northwest. And that's good because we're expecting some critical fire weather conditions as we get in to the next 24 hours. So this will at least provide a little bit of relief at the onset. Not much, but it's better than nothing. Here's the 24-hour RTMA temperature comparison. Not much change over the past 24 hours, though. One thing to just point out is that portions of the high desert up in Nevada to the high desert areas of Southern California look to be a couple degrees cooler today than yesterday as that inside slider moves down. And that's important because cold air in that region sets the stage for offshore winds. Here's the latest RTMA wind speed and direction. And you could see that along the coast this morning, we have either very light winds or stagnant air or just some weak onshore flow. However, as you get into the high desert, you could start seeing some of that north to northeast flow starting to kick in. And some portions of the northern deserts already in that 24 to 28 mile an hour range with some locally higher winds in the spots you see a little bit of yellow. Here's the GFS Ensemble 500 millibar height forecast, and you could see that right now we're seeing that first inside slider moving across the desert southwest with ridging trying to nose its way in, but a resurgence of second inside slider is likely to cause a resurgence of offshore winds later in the week. This is Thursday morning, and then that trough slides east, followed by a weak transient ridge, so a little bit warmer as we head into the weekend, but that should fortunately be short-lived, as it looks like another trough moving in from the Pacific Ocean is likely to move in late next weekend, and that could hopefully provide some cooler temperatures and some increased moisture. Here's the GFS precipitation forecast, and a very dry week this week due to the weather pattern that we're expected. But as we get later into the weekend and into early next week, we are looking at the chance. I wouldn't I would not take this to the bank. There's still a lot that's subject to change, but we're looking at the chance of some moisture moving into the area. Now, I will say take that with a grain of salt because the trend is a week out. The models have been way overdoing the precipitation than what actually has occurred. But just know that there is the chance that there's some relief in sight as we get into the late weekend into early next week. Here's the GFS wind forecast, and today is going to be a two-part day. The first half of today, we're expecting onshore winds. However, as we get into the evening hours, we're expecting those winds to shift to offshore and set the stage for our moderate Santa Ana event tomorrow. And for that event, we're expecting wind gusts in the 30 to 50 mile an hour range with locally higher wind gusts of 60 miles an hour or higher, especially in those areas that are prone to northeast funneling of winds. Then when Tuesday, it looks like we'll have weak onshore flow, which could maybe give us some temporary relief. But unfortunately, with that second inside slider trough, we're looking at the potential for offshore wind resurgence. We still don't have super high confidence in exact values of the wind speeds yet for that second event, just because it's still a few days out. But it does look like that second event could possibly be stronger than tomorrow's event. And then as we get into Friday, the winds then become weak and onshore again. And then next weekend, looks like the odds are in favor of onshore winds occurring. I want to show the NWS frost and freeze areas forecast really quick because this is very important for two reasons. Number one, frost and freeze is how you turn live fuel into dead fuel. So with the Santa Ana is expected the next couple days. You could see that in the Eastern Mountains PSA, portions of the Western Mountains PSA, and the Southern Mountains PSA, mainly the higher elevations. We're looking at below freezing temperatures. Looks like a big pocket around Big Bear Lake. So that means we could have some of the live fuel there turn to dead fuel. We also see lots of cold air over the Sierra with areas below freezing. And the cold air to the northeast is important because that's the big driver of Santa Ana wind events. So as we get into the further into the week, that cold air seems to linger on, and then especially into the late week, we'll see more of a resurgence of it. So the key point here is we could see some areas of frost and freeze turning live fuel to dead fuel in the Southern California mountains, especially in those higher elevations, as well as a pretty good chance of offshore winds throughout the week with some breaks in between, just because having that cold air over the high desert is very important because that's the main driver. Here's the National Weather Service exceptionally low minimum RH forecast. So this is where the minimum RH is forecast to be 15% or less. And we see some areas across the deserts today. But as we get into tomorrow, we're expecting much more widespread areas, and beyond the deserts, we're expecting areas on the south coast and in the Southern California mountains to reach below 15% due to the offshore winds bringing drier air to the region. A little bit of a uptick in RH on Tuesday as we'll have light onshore flow. That'll give us a little bit of a break in the action. But unfortunately, later in the week with that second trough and that second potential offshore wind event, we're looking at much lower RHs along the mountains and the south coast because that event also, too, looks to be more stronger than the first event. Then Friday, lots of areas of very low RH. And then we start to uptick a little bit on Saturday as the pattern begins to change to an onshore wind pattern. Another really important thing to keep watch of is the poor overnight recovery forecast. You can see tonight we have a pretty good size area of poor overnight recoveries expected in the Western Mountains PSA, and that's where the maximum RH is forecast to be 30% or less. So really not much relief overnight. Tomorrow, much more widespread poor overnight recoveries tomorrow night across the area due to the northeasterly winds in the mountains. There's going to be almost absolutely no marine layer with offshore winds, so we don't expect any relief, especially in the mountains. Looks to back off a little bit on Tuesday night just because Tuesday looks to be a little bit of a break in the action day. But as we get later into the week with that stronger Santa Ana event, we're going to see much more widespread poor overnight recoveries and some extremely poor overnight recoveries. Looks like almost even maybe flirting with the low teens to even upper single digits in portions of the Western Mountains PSA in LA County, where you see those darker colors, those browns starting to pop up. Thursday, not much change, but then as we get into Friday at night, it looks like we'll start to see a little bit of an uptick, but not too much. I do expect, though, this to continue to uptick as we get into the weekend. So here is a new Fireweather Pie product that I want to use, and this is a very good product for this type of scenario. So this product shows you anywhere the National Weather Service forecast has the relative humidity less than or equal to 15% and the wind speed greater than or equal to 25 miles an hour. So where are those dry and windy areas? And those areas will be shaded in red. So this is starting at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. You can see a couple red dots in the Western Mountain PSA, but as we get later into the day, into the afternoon, you start seeing more reds popping up. You could see some areas in western Riverside County along the La Sierra Hills of dry and windy conditions. And then as we get into tomorrow night, that backs off a little bit. And so Tuesday, much less for as far as we could go out on Tuesday, just because we'll have a little more relief from the onshore winds. But some portions of the desert could still be dry, as you see in the northern deserts up there. So this is basically the same thing. Instead of it, though, having sustained wind speed like the previous graphic, this shows anywhere shaded in red where the relative humidity, the forecast relative humidity from the National Weather Service is expected to be 15% or less, and the wind gust is expected to be 25 miles an hour or greater. So this is looking at the same thing, shaded in red, except we're using wind gust instead of sustained wind speed. So you can see this is 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock now tomorrow morning. We're starting to see those red areas fill in. This is now 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. We see a lot of areas of red across the south coast, especially in western Riverside County and the La Sierra Hills. Also some portions of the Southern California mountains. And that should continue throughout tomorrow afternoon and then subside tomorrow evening as the RH might come up a little bit and the winds die down a little bit. But nonetheless, there's plenty of red tomorrow due to the moderate Santa Anas expected. Here's the observed and forecast energy release components for the Western Mountains PSA. And you could see that over the next couple of days, ERCs are going to spike upwards due to the warm and dry conditions. Live fuels continue to remain critically low with respect to live fuel moisture, and dead fuel moisture continues to remain below normal due to the above normal ERCs expected. Here's the 7-day large fire potential product, and the main things I want to focus on here are the high risks we have for tomorrow across the south coast and the Western Mountains due to the winds, the high winds, this moderate Santa Ana event, and then with that second stronger Santa Ana event expected on Wednesday and Thursday, we have high risks out for wind across the south coast, western and eastern mountains PSAs, and then that will fall off, dropping to moderate on Friday as the winds are expected to be weaker, and then continue on Saturday as we get into a bit of a pattern change, hopefully this upcoming weekend into a cooler and wetter pattern. However, during the time of the high risk, we're expecting a potential moderate to heavy initial attack, and we could see some moderate to rapid rates of spread, especially in those windy areas on high risk days. Last but not least, here's the 6 to 10 day Climate Prediction Center temperature and precipitation outlooks, which are valid from November 8th to November 12th. And I kind of want to end off on a good note with some hopefully good news, where we could see a slight to moderate tilt towards below normal temperatures expected during this time, as well as either a slight tilt towards near normal precipitation or a slight tilt towards above normal precipitation in some of those northern portions of our area. As we're starting to get into that time where I said we're expecting a potential pattern change next week and into early next week. So on that note, that concludes today's webcast. The next webcast will be tomorrow, November 4th, 2024. See you then.